My God, folks. It is I, once again, the weird integrals guy on YouTube. And today we have the integral from 0 to pi of e to the cosine theta times the cosine of sine of theta d theta. What have I got myself into this time? Well, no worries. There are actually a couple of ways to solve this integral that are both extremely cool. So let's go over them one by one, starting with the complex realm. So I would like to first take note that you have cosines involved. So cosine theta here is an even function, and so is this cosine of sine of theta. And because this is an even function, we could rewrite the integral as 1/2 the integral over the symmetric interval, that is from negative pi to pi, of e to the cosine theta times the cosine of sine of theta d theta. Okay, cool. That looks cute, but we can make it look even better. Recall Euler's beautiful formula, that is e to the ix can be expanded as cosine of x plus I times sine x. So this implies that the cosine of x equals sine theta is just the real part of e to the I sine theta. And this implies the target integral I is now 1/2 the integral from negative pi to pi of e to the cosine theta times e to the I times the sine of theta d theta, with this real part operator acting on the integral. Okay, cool. Now we have a couple of exponential functions that is actually really nice to work with because we know exponentials multiply quite nicely. So we write this as 1/2 of the real part of the integral from negative pi to pi of e to the cosine of theta plus I times sine of theta, which is another familiar phase terribly. Sorry about that, d theta. So the argument of the exponential function is yet another argument, and we have 1/2 terribly. Sorry about that. Of the real part of the integral terribly. Sorry about that again. Watch out for the timestamps. Negative pi to pi of e to the I theta. So that is exponentially awesome. That was a horrible math dad joke, I guess. So what on earth are we supposed to do with this thing? Well, it looks like stable grounds to actually apply some complex analysis. Well, some more complex analysis anyway. So what if we let e to the I theta equal z? Well, that would mean on differentiating, we would have I times e to the I theta d theta equal to dz. But the thing about e to the I theta is that that is supposed to be our z variable, so we have terribly, sorry about that, what's wrong with my handwriting today or every day? So d theta is equal to dz over I times z, which is dope. But what about the path along which we are integrating? So theta here goes from, terribly, sorry about that again, negative pi to pi. So how does that look in the complex realm? Well, we see that z here is equal to e to the I theta, and this of course implies that the absolute value of z is equal to the absolute value of e to the I theta, and e to the I times some real number. Well, that is just going to be cosine squared plus sine squared theta in a square root. So this thing equals 1. Okay, cool. So the absolute value of z is equal to 1. So if I draw this on the complex plane, that is to say I have the imaginary axis and I have the real axis and my OCD is kicking in, that looks slightly more perpendicular. So I can draw this vector starting off at the origin of a length 1, and this vector can rotate up to pi radians in the counterclockwise sense. But it can also rotate pi radians in the clockwise sense, and that gives us one full circle. That is a very poorly drawn circle, but you get the idea. In fact, maybe it would have been better if I just carefully erase this, just draw one nice big circle, modulus or radius equal to 1, and we see that as we approach the negative real axis from above, the argument is approaching pi, whereas from below it is approaching negative pi. In other words, we do have one full circle in the complex realm, so that means our integral from negative pi to pi has now been converted into an integral over the unit circle z equals 1 of what exactly? Well, we have e to the I theta being z, and we have this z term downstairs and dz, and of course we have this factor of 1 over I outside. Now the resulting integral can be solved quite easily using Cauchy's residue theorem. So the function e to the z over z, this is holomorphic everywhere except for z equal to 0, where we see that we have a simple pole that can be demonstrated over here as e to the z can be expanded as the sum over k from 0 to infinity of z to the k over k factorial. Terribly sorry about that. So e to the z over z means expand using 1 over z. That gives us the sum over k from 0 to infinity of z to the k minus 1, terribly sorry about that, over k factorial. I think Flammy used to write his k's like this, perhaps. That looks like a cute little kappa. Anyway, so that's k factorial. So if we expand this, that is the k equals 0 term, that gives us a 1 over 0 factorial, which is 1. And then we have the z to the minus 1, so that is 1 over z, plus the sum over k from 1 to infinity of z to the k minus 1 over k factorial, which is, of course, a holomorphic function. So what we have here is the Laurent series centered at z equal to 0, and the coefficient of z to the minus 1, that is our residue. So this implies that the, terribly sorry about that, the residue of e to the z over z at z equals 0, that equals exactly 1. Okay, cool. Now, returning back to our integral, we know that the target integral I equals, I forgot the real part operator, right? So that's the real part. Terribly sorry about that. And I might as well give myself a bit more writing space. Again, OCD kicking in. That was an interesting looking RE. Anyway, so that is, we need the real part of the integral, and the integral itself can be evaluated using the residue theorem. So we have 1 over I times 2 pi I times the sum of residues, but there is only one residue, of e to the z over z at z equal to 0, that is. And we do see a nice cancellation of I terms happening, and I think I forgot something else, right? I forgot the factor of 1 over 2, but I can place it over here. So that it cancels even better with the 2i term. So we have 2i, in fact, so the 2i goes away, and the result is the real part of what exactly? Oh yeah, pi times the residue, which is 1. So the real part of pi, last time I checked, should be equal to pi itself, and that is the result of our target integral. Now, another way to evaluate this thing is actually Feynman's trick of differentiating under the integral sign, and I think that's a really cool method we can employ here as well, both my favorite techniques of integration in one place. What more could I ask for from life? Besides an analytic solution to the Navier-Stokes equation. So the integral I, recall, we expanded this thing as 1/2 the integral from negative pi to pi of e to the I theta d theta. Now, if I introduce an integral function I of, again, I'm forgetting the real part. If I introduce an integral function I of alpha, defined as the integral from negative pi to pi of e to the alpha times e to the I theta d theta, where alpha is actually going to be positive, some cool things happen. So we're integrating a bounded function over a bounded interval, so clearly there are no problems regarding convergence, and we can differentiate under the integral sign with respect to alpha. And that yields integral negative pi to pi of partial over partial alpha, e to the alpha, e to the I theta, d theta. And the result is the integral, terribly sorry about that, from negative pi to pi of what exactly? Oh yeah, the exponential function repeated, but then the derivative of the argument. And of course, that will result in partial alpha over partial alpha, giving 1. E to the I theta is treated as a constant. Okay, cool. So that's actually quite nice. It looks like we have the exponential function and a term related to the derivative of its argument. which is awesome, by the way. But we're missing something. I mean, if you differentiate with respect to theta, e to the alpha, e to the I theta, then the result would be e to the alpha, terribly sorry about that, e to the alpha, e to the I theta, times alpha, e to the I theta, times, well, a factor of I. And that's something we're missing. We're missing a factor of alpha times I. So I could expand using alpha I over here, and then we're good to go. Then what's left is basically just the antiderivative, which will result in the exponential function itself. That is e to the alpha, e to the I theta, 1 over alpha I outside. And the limits we're interested in are negative pi and pi, which is awesome because e to the I times pi is equal to 1, and that is, no wait, it's negative 1, and e to the negative I pi is exactly the same result. Okay, cool. So the result is 1 over alpha I, e to the negative alpha minus e to the negative alpha, which goes to 0. And the result here is 0. So I prime of alpha is actually equal to 0, and that is awesome because that means your integral function is independent of the alpha parameter. It is a constant. So this implies that I of alpha, which is equal to the integral from, what was it? Oh yeah, negative pi to pi of e to the alpha, e to the I theta, d theta. Terribly sorry about that. So the result here is independent of alpha, and that means this should be equal to the limit, terribly sorry about that, the limit of I of alpha, as alpha tends to 0 from the right, because we defined alpha to be a positive real number. But if I take the limit as alpha tends to 0, then all I'm getting is the integral from negative pi to pi of e to the 0, d theta, which is a 1, of course. And the result here would be 2 times pi. So this implies that the target integral, which was the real part, oh wait, it was 1/2 the real part, terribly sorry about that, the real part of I of alpha evaluated at 1, which is equal to this limit that we've evaluated up there. And this implies, terribly sorry about that, this implies that I here is equal to 1 over 2 times the real part of 2 pi, which last time I checked is 2 pi, and the result is pi once again. So a beautiful integral solved using a couple of my favorite integration techniques. The gamma function could not make an appearance today. It will soon later. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. I hope you learned something from the video. Thank you. See you next time.